You. The role of a security guard officer is to enforce the rules of the client, provide contracted, agreed services, observe and report unusual site conditions. A security guard officer's authority comes from the client. The client may not operate outside of the law. When you leave your client's property, your authority to enforce the rules ends. Diversity refers to human qualities that are different from our own, and those of groups to which we belong, but that are manifested in other individuals and groups. The 3 Ps. Polite, professional, prepared. De-escalation should be the focus and objective of every difficult or potentially hostile situation. Unarmed security guards officers do not carry or have access to a firearm or a facsimile of a firearm that might leave the impression that the person is armed. Security guard officer means an individual employed by a contract security company or a proprietary security organization whose primary duty is to perform any function of a security guard and patrol service. 2 of the most extremely important items on security guard officer applications are a valid email address and current telephone number. Both armed and unarmed security guard officers may receive training and legally use non-lethal, less than lethal weapons such as baton, chemical spray, and stun gun, taser. One of the main problems encountered by private protective services when processing a security guard officer applications is missing information. Both unarmed security guard officer and armed security guard officer applicants must complete at least 4 hours of general training administered by a certified trainer. General training is valid for 1 year, while electronic fingerprinting information is valid for 6 months. Within 15 days of employment, an unarmed security guard officer applicant must complete general training and pass an examination. You must pay a $20 late fee for each month past the expiration date, up to 3 months. The commissioner may assess a civil penalty of up to $2,000 for each statute or rule violation, including operating without a proper registration card. The best way to support the citizenship status? Attach appropriate documentation, such as a copy of a U.S. passport, or supply your social security number. Attach a copy of a certificate of birth abroad, because you were born overseas. Attach a copy of both sides of your permanent resident alien green card, I-551. If you have a prior criminal history and were convicted of a felony or misdemeanor, your situation must now be reviewed. And you might still be able to become registered, provided that at least 5 years has passed since you completed court-ordered probation. The name of the law that provides this is the Fresh Start Act. Officer, the employer, and the client. As a security guard officer, your power of arrest is the same as that. Hours of training, administered by a trainer who has been certified by the Commissioner of Commerce and Insurance, to train security guards, officers in the use of chemical spray. Spray, only if the security guard officer has successfully completed the appropriate training for the use of the weapon, as established by this rule. The security guard officer carries on his or her person. Officer in both instances refers to police officer. Security guard officers derive their powers of arrest from their rights as an ordinary citizen or private person, known as citizen's arrest. Notice of authority and grounds for arrest. Telephone call. When arresting a person, the officer shall inform the person of the officer's authority and the cause of the arrest, and exhibit the warrant if the officer has one, except when the person is in the actual commission of the offense, or is pursued immediately after an escape. Notice of authority and grounds for arrest. Telephone call. No person under arrest by any officer or private citizen shall be named in any book, ledger, or any other record until after the person has successfully completed a telephone call to an attorney, relative, minister, or any other person that the person shall choose, without undue delay. 1 hour shall constitute a reasonable time, without undue delay. However, if the arrested person does not choose to make a telephone call, then the person shall be booked or docketed immediately.
Wow.
Arrest by private person. Grounds. A private person may arrest another for a public offense committed in the arresting person's presence. When the person arrested has committed a felony, although not in the arresting person's presence, or when a felony has been committed, and the arresting person has reasonable cause to believe that the person arrested committed the felony. Arrest by private person. Grounds. A private person who makes an arrest of another, pursuant to the provisions of sections 407-109, 407-115, shall receive no arrest fee or compensation for the arrest. Arrest by private person. Time. A private person may make an arrest for a felony at any time. Arrest by private person. Notice of grounds. A private person making an arrest shall, at the time of the arrest, inform the person arrested of the cause of the arrest, except when the person is in the actual commission of the offense, or when arrested on pursuit. Arrest by private person. Notice of intention to make arrest. Use of force to enter dwelling house. If the person to be arrested has committed a felony, and a private person, after notice of the person's intention to make the arrest, is refused admittance, the arresting person may break open an outer or inner door or window of a dwelling house to make the arrest. Disposition of person arrested by private person. A private person who has arrested another for a public offense shall, without unnecessary delay, take the arrested person before a magistrate, or deliver the arrested person to an officer. An officer may take before a magistrate, without a warrant, any person who, being engaged in the commission of a public offense, is arrested by a bystander, and delivered to the officer, and anyone arrested by a private person, as provided in sections 4. Reasonable, prudent person, to conclude that a crime either has been, or is being committed, and this is the individual who either committed the crime, or who is committing the crime. Requires more than 50% certainty, i.e., more likely than not. The role of the security guard officer begins whenever a security guard officer turns a detained suspect over to law enforcement or provides witness testimony. Whenever a security guard officer provides information leading to the arrest of an individual. This could result in the security guard officer being required to testify at trial and other proceedings. Liability. If security guards officers exceed the law in arresting, searching, seizing, or using the legal system. The primary purpose of criminal law is to prevent undesirable behavior and punish those who commit an act deemed undesirable by society. The primary purpose of civil law is to resolve disputes and provide compensation for someone injured by someone else's acts or behavior. Another key difference between civil and criminal law is the standards of proof required to reach a verdict. Criminal law. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is required in criminal actions. What is a crime? A crime is usually something that someone does in violation of a law. Always involves at least one other person, a victim, for example. A crime is usually prosecuted and punished. In what way did the offense affect society or the community? Civil. In what way was a particular victim affected, due to losing days at work, or being denied prolonged access to services, etc.? Criminal law and civil law differ with respect to how cases are initiated, who may bring charges or file suit. The exercise of official discretion in punishment by grading of offenses. The Commissioner of Commerce and Insurance, may investigate any person engaged or suspected of engaging in any business or activity regulated under the Act. Upon receipt of any written complaint against a licensee, registrant, certified trainer, or proprietary security or registration card, which is revoked or suspended by the Commissioner of Commerce and Insurance, pursuant to Section 62-35130 of the Act, shall be surrendered to the Commissioner within 10 days of the effective date of the revocation, proportionate to the seriousness of the offense.
Give warning.
Felonies and misdemeanors distinguished. All violations of law that may be punished by 1 year or more of confinement or by the infliction of the death penalty are denominated felonies, and all violations of law punishable by fine or confinement for less than 1 year, or both, are denominated misdemeanors. Prohibited act, when no penalty prescribed, is misdemeanor. Injury and civil wrongdoing. A tort is a civil wrong done by one person or entity to another, which results in injury or property damage, and frequently involves monetary compensation to the injured party. There are 3 categories of torts: negligence, intentional tort, strict liability. Torts, negligence. Negligence is an unintentional tort, to which there are 4 elements that must be satisfied. Duty. The defendant had a duty to act in a reasonable manner. Breach of duty, meaning that the defendant failed to act reasonably. Causation. The defendant's breach of duty must be the cause of the plaintiff's injury or loss. Damages. Monetary, property, or other loss. Torts, intentional tort. An intentional tort is a deliberate wrongdoing in which the defendant acted with intent to cause harm or injury. Some examples of intentional torts include assault and battery, false imprisonment, fraud, invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Torts, strict liability. Strict liability is a tort that does not require actual negligence or intent to injure. It is based on an absolute or strict duty to ensure that something is safe. Strict liability frequently comes into play with hazardous activities such as bungee jumping. Example: the company that owns the bungee cords or offers the activity to consumers has an absolute duty to make sure that the bungee cords are intact, hooked up correctly, and are ready to operate safely. In this example, if a consumer is injured because the bungee cord breaks or comes undone, the company is liable for the injury under strict liability. Legal powers and limitations. The arrested person escaped or was rescued may immediately pursue and retake the arrested person at any time and in any place within the state. Breaking in to retake escaped prisoner. To retake the party escaping or rescued, the person pursuing may, after notice of that person's intention and refusal of admittance, break open any outer or inner door or window of a dwelling house. Private security guard officers and the criminal public, society, or the state, even if the immediate victim is an individual. Examples: murder, assault. A registration card, which is revoked or suspended by the Commissioner of Commerce and Insurance, pursuant to Section 6235130 of the Act, shall be surrendered to the Commissioner within 10 days of the effective date of the a registration card, which is revoked or suspended by the Commissioner of Commerce and Insurance, pursuant to Section 6235130 of the Act, shall be surrendered to the Commissioner within 10 days of the effective date of the Unarmed to armed status requires complete armed guard application in the amount of $50, plus any fingerprint processing fees set by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The registration is $25. Proprietary Security Organization, Unarmed Security Guard Officer Registration Card. All unarmed registration cards issued by the Commissioner of Commerce and Insurance, to employees of Proprietary Security Guard is $50. Timely renewal registration card, which is revoked or suspended by the Commissioner of Commerce and Insurance, pursuant to Section 6235130 of the Act, shall be surrendered to the Commissioner within 10 days of the expiration of that unarmed security guard registration. The penalty fee for late renewal of either an armed or unarmed in the amount of $50, plus any fingerprint processing fees set by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. By the Commissioner of Commerce and Insurance, in writing, within 10 days of any Guide the exercise of official discretion in punishment by grading of offenses and prescribe penalties that are proportionate to the seriousness of the offense. Felonies and misdemeanors distinguished. All violations of law that may be punished by 1 year or more of confinement or by the infliction of the death penalty are denominated felonies. Violations of law punishable by fine or confinement for less than 1 year, or both, are denominated misdemeanors. Prohibited act, when no penalty prescribed, is misdemeanor. When the performance or non-performance of any act is made criminal by statute,